Before we get started, got to give a quick word out to our sponsor, Open Fortune, who rented us this beautiful studio and made today possible. Open Fortune took the fortune cookie and flipped it on its head. In a world where people see 4,000 to 6,000 ads a day, the fortune cookie breaks through the noise with ads that burn the brand into consumers' hands, reaching 99% of zip codes. They are one of the world's most creative ad canvases. So thank you, Open Fortune. Appreciate you giving us this opportunity to tell Liz's story and many others today. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to How the Fuck Did You Get That Job, where we continue our quest to dissect some of the most intriguing career paths, and yes, where yours truly never misses a beat or a question. Today, we're highlighting Liz Crisafi. After studying communication at Georgia Southern University, Liz entered the advertising world with 22 Squared. She then made waves at Eastman Kodak as the director of studio partnerships and further brought in her expertise at Discovery Communications as VP of Integrated Marketing. With leadership roles at both Ogilvy and Mather Kimberly Clark under her belt, Liz now spearheads efforts as the Global VP of Integrated Marketing for InterContinental Hotels Group. So, Liz, how the fuck did you get that job?
It's interesting. I didn't actually start out thinking that I was going to get into marketing.
So bring me back when we are like a little kid and like somebody, your first grade teacher is like, what do you want, Liz? What do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah. When I was little, I loved like just storytelling. You know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an actress or be a reporter on the news. I loved just the aspect of other people's stories. I guess I kind of had a ideal childhood, which I don't know if I, like to brag about, but it was one of those, like, I liked other people's stories because mine seemed kind of benign, but in a good way, I guess. And so, as I grew up, I loved being able to hear what is happening and telling other people's stories in a powerful way. And so I actually started in college in broadcasting, and so I did the local news channel.
And so what made Georgia Southern the right university for you? And then on top of that, what about broadcast journalism?
Starting with Georgia Southern, I'm from Georgia, so I wanted to stay somewhere in state, and Georgia Southern was kind of in our backyard. But more importantly, they had a really good mass communications department, and it really focused on broadcasting. I also, because I'm from the South, had a really Southern accent, and so they went through like voice and phonetics, so I kind of lost my Southern accent, so I could...
Yeah, I can't tell.
Well, trust me, if you get around my parents and my family, it comes out. But for the most part, I kind of worked through how to have a general American dialect and broadcasting. And so Southern was one of those schools that it was very like hands-on. You kind of, it wasn't as like, we're going to go and you're going to read a book and take a test. It was very experiential and kind of learning through the process, and it was just a right fit for me.
And so what did broadcast journalism look like then compared to what it looks like right now?
It's changed so much. Well, I think back then there were 3, networks. So if you wanted to actually get into it, it was a very competitive field, and you kind of had to work your way up, and even then it was going to be small, opportunities in really small markets, all the way up to, working for ABC, CBS, and then eventually CNN. So it was one of those that I really was excited about the field, but as I kind of got into it, it just became, I think, a little overwhelming to try to figure out like how I was going to make it in that industry.
And so where did that pivot come from to marketing? Like, what was there a moment where you realized this is a turning point for me? I'm good at it, and maybe broadcast isn't for me?
Yeah, well, it was after I graduated from Southern and I moved to the big city of Atlanta. And I had the opportunity to work for CNN and like an internship, and I loved and was, excited about that opportunity. But it was going to be the midnight shift, I think, where, back then you would take like the fax off the fax machine and see what news happened. And I also had a friend who worked at the agency and recommended that I, come over and get into marketing. And it paid better and had better hours. And And they told me what they did, and I was like, that's kind of cool. It's still telling stories, but it's in a different way. And I don't know.
It's funny because ad agents, I've never heard somebody say, well, the ad agency paid better and had better hours, but compared to broadcast,
at the time it did, especially,
I think still probably.
Yeah, probably.
Right? Broadcast journalism, it's tough these days. I went to Newhouse and have a lot of friends who are on Bozeman Daily TV today. So you talk about storytelling and your love of it. What were there stories or books growing up that you loved that kind of made a big impact on your career today?
Yeah, I mean, I love to read in general. Probably the one that for me would just open my imagination up was the Chronicles of Narnia and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and just the visualization of like going into another world and experiencing something interesting and magical. But
so when you walk into that ad agency, does it feel like Narnia or does it not?
Into the ad agency? Yeah. A little bit, but again, like I was straight out of college, so
Sure.
Of course I got put on an account that wasn't very sexy or glamorous.
What was the account?
It was American Cyanamid, something like that. It's a agricultural chemical company.
Okay, super sexy.
Very sexy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how in the world are we going to make herbicides and pesticides interesting?
Yeah.
And I remember my very first ad campaign. I was like, we're going to do something really creative. So we went into an OR and had a giant potato that we had like the paddles on, and it was like, don't let your crops die. And it was
great.
I was like, it doesn't have to be boring, even if it's like some random chemical company or B2B marketing.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be boring.
No, it doesn't. And so did you have to get creative sign off for that, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, everything you have to do has to have legal sign off, especially when you're dealing with chemicals or other things. But
absolutely. Working at both agency and brand direct, what are the biggest differences or expectation versus reality?
I think that expectations are, agencies are just, a lot of fun, and you just party and have a lot of, creative opportunities to, work together and come up with great ideas. I think the reality of it is there's so many smart people, within agencies that can find that insight that you just, haven't really discovered yet, and can bring out the story in a way that's really authentic and relevant and just human,
Absolutely.
I think on the client side, it's like, it's a cushy 9-to-5 job, right? There's the,
Sure.
Dichotomy of the two. But on the client side, it is very much, you own this business. Like, it is your throat to choke or your back to pat if things go wrong. And you have to make sure that you are doing everything that will drive business results.
What do you prefer?
I'll have to say I've been on the client side more.
Being the brand.
I like being the brand because I like to own it. I think the agencies, if you have an agency relationship, you really have to make them part of your team. It can't be like this partner that you only bring in when you need something.
Sure.
And I think that on the agency side, that there's probably a lot of companies that don't really truly embed them as partners.
So you end up going brand direct to Kodak, right? What does Kodak look like then, and what about when it leaves? Because Kodak is such a, it's a brand where I think everybody knows it.
Oh, well, not everybody knows it. I have a funny story I'll tell you in a second. But Kodak was the biggest brand in the world when I started working there, which I guess I'm dating myself, but that's okay. And I mean, there was no better company to work for as it related to best-in-class marketing, telling great stories. Picture tells 1,000 words, or a picture says 1,000 words, right? And it was very much a opportunity for me to work for a brand that I was passionate about, that meant something, that was like a part of everybody's life. You think about Kodak throughout, its history. It's been there for the best of times and the worst of times, and it was just such a emotional brand that I was excited to work for. And then now, I think that you can look back at Kodak as a great case study of, if you don't follow where the market is going and look at
Blockbuster a little bit.
Blockbuster, Radio Shack.
So what story were you going to tell me about people not knowing Kodak?
Oh, so I mentor a lot of young professionals and like college, and I was doing a panel and I mentioned Kodak, and there were like 2 or 3 of them. And I'm like, "What's Kodak?" And
wow.
I'm like, "Oh wow."
So it is generational.
It is generational.
They've really lost their brand share.
It really did.
No
and
offense.
so I had to tell them, who Kodak was, and they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna look that up." I'm
Yeah,
like,
wow. I don't know. I thought like Polaroids were, I guess Polaroid is different than Kodak necessarily.
A little
but they
bit.
kind of go hand in hand in my head. But
I think, they're making a comeback as well.
Right?
Yeah.
With like a nostalgia play.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's interesting when you think about brand awareness. There's high brand awareness with a generation that's older
Correct.
and like very low.
Very interesting. So you end up going to Discovery then, right? Mm-hmm. What made Discovery the right place for you?
I love Discovery just as a network anyway, and kind of how they brought to life human stories and in a real and relevant way, as well as, just everything from nature and Earth, with Planet Earth to all the way to, their networks like TLC and Science Channel, et cetera. And so I think just in general, it was another great company that I was passionate about. I would say that as I think about even my career progression, it's like if I didn't believe in the brand, then I wouldn't necessarily want to go be a part of that, brand and follow my heart and my gut there.
For sure. And when you're transitioning these careers, are these just coming to you? Are you going to recruiters? Are you going on, LinkedIn or reaching out to people? Or how are these opportunities coming about?
I would say it's a little bit of both, but mostly it's about relationships. So my Kodak, I went to them because I was an ad in the paper back in the days. They were looking for, someone for marketing communications, and I applied and mailed my resume in. But from there, I think I learned pretty quickly that your brand, both professionally and personally, is so important because you have to make sure that you show up.
It's
and
like the birth of personal branding started before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so once I did, some of that with Kodak, it really just had the opportunity for people who reached out to me and said, "You would be great for this job," or "Would you ever consider coming to work for our company?"
Yeah. There's that cliche line that I hate, that it's like your network is your net worth, but like it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. You end up going back to the ad agency world, right?
I did.
Why? Because
it's Ogilvy. I mean, at the time, I first of all, I knew that they were working on some really great clients, and I wanted to expand my knowledge and grow kind of, my opportunity to think about great creative and what's going to break through and learning.
What were some of the projects that you really felt like you learned a lot from there?
Well, interestingly enough, kind of going back to your last question, I worked on IHG.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So it kind of comes full circle. So I worked on some campaigns with IHG that were like everything from gamification to trying to build our loyalty program in a way that was one-to-one marketing way back then. And, Ogilvy had a really good practice to be able to understand data-driven marketing and how to use technology to, connect. And so I learned that, as well as just in the creative, in the words of David Ogilvy, if it doesn't sell, it's not creative. And that was so important, on my journey.
What was special about the InterContinental work that you did over there that kind of gave you an inkling, like maybe this is a brand I'd like to work for?
They are absolutely focused on great hospitality. I'm sure a lot of your guests, and I hear it all the time, and I truly believe it, is your brand is your culture. And IHG is a great place to work because of the people. Our best product, even though we have 19 brands, 6,000 destinations, which I know is a plug for IHG, but is
self-awareness is key.
Uh-huh.
I said self-awareness is key.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But is the people, the best product are the people that walk in and out of our doors every day.
Yeah.
And it's a great company that supports your professional growth. And I was like, it's hospitality. I love travel.
Yeah.
It was a great role for me, and it was a great company. It was like it checked all the boxes.
In the travel business, right? It's super competitive. Right? Everybody loves to travel. How do you think IHG just does a great job of separating themselves?
When you think about IHG, a lot of people aren't quite sure still, who IHG is as far as like brand awareness. Either you know us or you don't.
Yeah.
And once you know us, and it's great because we have amazing brands. So when you think about, I think for us, I can't speak for others, but I think we have the opportunity to tell our brand stories in a way that is like it resonates with you depending on what type of travel you have. So if you want to stay at a Kimpton, we've got great Kimptons.
We were in Kimpton, I don't know, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a great experience.
Yeah, and InterContinental all the way to Holiday Inn Express. So any stage in your life, in your career, in your travel, it's like we have a brand that is going to meet your needs, and it's a place for everybody.
And you just brought up those 3-4 different brands, right? When you're marketing to each, they are marketing to different people. Like, how do you balance that on a day-to-day?
In general, if you take my situation right now, like I'm a mother, I'm, in a leadership position at IHG. I travel for business. I'm here, at a conference, and I may stay at a Holiday Inn Express. I may stay at an InterContinental. I may stay at a Kimpton. So it's really depending on what your travel needs are, and you just have to be relevant in the moment. I think, as you think about personalization and relevancy, it's really critical to make sure that you're co-creating that, and it's not just I have your data and I know what you did in the past, but like, how do I market to you in the future?
And when you come on as for IHG, like, what are the pain points that they're feeling to have you to solve?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. When you come on to IHG, right? What are their pain points, and how do you solve them?
I think pain points. We don't have to talk about COVID because obviously there was a lot going on there. And as you look at now, it's just making sure that you are being mindful of what's happening across the world, because we have teams across the world that are working in difficult situations. You've got things that are happening as it relates to different factors of the economy, and so you have to be mindful of you're not saying something that seems tone deaf, and that you can be very thoughtful of like some of our automatic trigger marketing, as an example, life cycle marketing, that if you just stayed in a hotel somewhere that wasn't necessarily a great experience for you, and we said congratulations, you just stayed at this during a stressful time in your life. We have to be mindful of that, and how do we balance life cycle marketing versus real-time marketing versus brand marketing. So it's the full funnel approach.
So we talked a lot before this podcast about mentorship. What does it mean to you, just both looking up and also helping younger people?
It's so critical because you have to first learn from others. I've learned so much from people who have mentored me throughout my career of what to do as well as what not to do, and paying it forward to others so that you can help them navigate both professional challenges as well as personal challenges. We were on a discussion earlier today talking about the importance of female leadership and mentorship, but we're going to rebrand it. We're not going to say mentor and mentee anymore. We're going to professional therapy, because
I like that.
It's a little bit less intimidating, and it makes it more approachable too, so you can really show up and be authentic and vulnerable. It's
a little more human too, because even I'm going to start using that. Mentorship is very how do I find a mentor? It's that's tough. I don't know. But we talked a lot about just the color pink and what it means to you before this, right? You're wearing pink pants right now.
Yes.
Why?
Well, my latest mentee, or the person that I feel that has really helped me kind of broaden even my perspective of mentoring people is my mentee is Claudia, and she is a breast cancer survivor. And specifically, she and I were paired together, and about 2 weeks after we started working together, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And for me, I showed up and was not sure exactly what to say. I could tell her how to manage her career growth or, how to navigate the professional world. But when it's something that traumatic of life and death, it was something that taught me as much as hopefully I helped her, through that. And yes, I'm wearing pink because I want to talk about Breast Cancer Awareness Month, because we as women, a lot of times, especially professional women, put ourselves last. We don't go to the doctor's appointments, or we reschedule it, and we take care of everybody else, and we don't take care of ourselves. And so it's really important to keep that in mind.
And we got to give her a shout out for being an
Claudia.
EP on today's episode. I'm proud to say that today you're the 6th of 7 women that we are interviewing today, and trying to highlight more women voices. What advice would you give yourself at the age of 21, early 20s, to who are ambitious and who do want to make a big impact in their career?
I would probably give myself 2 pieces of advice. One is, if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing professionally. So make sure that you're putting yourself out there, and that it is something that we sometimes prefer to be in the background than in the be the voice of making sure that you can give your ideas, even if you feel like you're not being heard. It's put yourself out there and be feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And then I think in general, for me specifically, because I'm kind of a type A personality, it's take your work seriously, but don't take yourselves too seriously. And I think that is so important, because we get so overwhelmed sometimes. I got overwhelmed of worrying about everything, that I sometimes lost perspective of we're not curing cancer. We're just doing marketing. And at the same time, I love what I do, and it's okay to be passionate, but just don't be so stressed out.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Before we get started with the quick question round, I got to ask you to open one of these.
All
I'll
right.
pass. Oh, that was
all
quick.
right.
Good hands. And see if it relates to today's podcast.
All right.
So I have to ask you, though, too, do you have any fortune cookie moments in your head that really just reminisce?
Moments? I'll tell you, I do one thing that's kind of weird, I guess, and superstitious. When I open a fortune cookie and I read it, if I like what it says, I'll eat the cookie. And if I don't like what it says, I will not eat the cookie. So
only positivity.
Yes, only positivity. Or something that I feel like is going to help me. I don't know.
People have their things. People are if you don't, there was one Open Fortune needed to make the color palette edible, because people were saying if you eat it, only if you eat it, it'll come true. There's a lot of...
Okay, maybe that's what it is. All right.
Yeah. Or you've heard the ... in bed. That one's good.
Yeah.
So you have to add ...
in bed.
So
yes, absolutely.
Your generosity will ripple out in ways you can't imagine. In bed.
All right. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, this one is going to be good then. Your gifts bring more joy than you can imagine. ... In bed.
Self-confidence.
All right.
Self-confidence is key.
I'm going to eat that cookie.
Yeah. Sweet.
Maybe I'll wait till after the rapid fire questions there.
Yeah. Person you'd most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
Prince. Was my first love.
That's it, first Prince. That's good. Favorite city in the world?
I love New York, of course, but I'd have to say Florence, because that's where my husband and I got married.
I love Florence. I studied there, but lived there for 4 months. It's great. Where in Florence did you get married?
We got married at, it's basically like the Justice of the Peace, but it was the Florence, the Sala de Rosa, which, yeah.
Nice. Wonderful.
And then we had our vows in front of the Boboli Gardens and the Fountains of Love.
Yep. It is the city of love in a lot of ways, other than Paris, but.
Yep.
Favorite spot to eat in Atlanta?
Oh, home. My husband is an amazing cook.
Love that.
Yeah.
Favorite Georgia Southern University alum?
Luke Bryan, I think,
Oh,
went.
he was?
Yes.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah.
I've seen Luke. He's
Yeah,
great. Yeah. Worst advice you've ever been given?
That's a good one. Probably that people don't leave jobs or companies, they leave bosses, which is true to some degree, but bosses usually change. So, like, if you really love the company and you love what you're doing, don't let one person decide, where you go or where you, or if you, don't want to stay there, you can always find a different boss.
There you go. That's a good one. If you had to sum up the internet in one sentence, how would you do it?
Influential in the best and worst ways.
I like that. It's succinct. Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
Yes, it's a temperature thing, though.
The last two, Carlo.
It is a temperature
Sophie was
thing.
the same way. We high-fived on camera. Great. I agree. It is a temperature thing. If it's super hot, absolutely not.
No.
Right. Yeah. And then in 10 years, where can we catch you?
That's a great question. I'm, hopefully still doing what I love, still helping tell great stories, but, making an impact somewhere. But
There you go.
yeah.
And last one earlier, we'll put this in, but favorite rom-com?
Oh, Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. That is
Yes.
a great one.
As You Wish.
Yeah. That's a great way to end it.